Hey, this is Nick Pavlidis from nickpavlidis.com. I am the vice president and chief terrible husband at aterriblehusband.com and a lawyer turned ghostwriter and coach. And you're listening to Outlier on Air, and I am an outlier.
Welcome to Outlier on Air with Ever Gonzalez, the show where we interview the founders, disruptors, and mavens of the world. Learn how grit, failure, and success are all a part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Hey everybody, welcome to Outlier on Air, the podcast where we interview founders, disruptors, and mavens. As always, I'm your host, Ever Gonzalez. On today's episode, we have Nick Pavlidis. He is an attorney, ghostwriter, coach, speaker, trainer, and all-around good guy. Nick, welcome to the show.
Ever, I'm so excited to be here and to chat with all the outliers out there. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. You know, we talking before we turned this whole thing on, we were talking about where you're from. You're a big sports fan. We were kind of talking about the two different cities that we're from and what it's like to be sports fans there. So first of all, tell us where you're calling us from, and then jump right into what it's like being an entrepreneur in that city, what the vibe feels like for entrepreneurs, startups, you know, the whole business scene. Tell us where you're calling us from.
Sure. I'm in the suburbs of Boston, almost to the New Hampshire border, about 25 miles north of Boston. And I've been here almost my whole life. I was born and raised here in Massachusetts. I'm a Boston sports fan, but don't hold that against me. We're an excited group. We understand suffering, and we understand winning, and we understand losing. So it's a great sort of way to experience entrepreneurship with that sort of ups and downs of being a Boston sports fan for sure. Although for about 10 years, I was dropped into the heart of New York City. I practiced law after law school. The law school I went to is out here in Massachusetts, and our major recruitment geographical area is New York City and the law firms there. So I was right out of law school. I went out to the New York City office of a large law firm. I was a corporate litigator and corporate bankruptcy litigator. So I've been in the middle of some heated arguments.
Right,
I've been in the middle of some pretty intense issues. I enjoyed that so much. I spent 10 years practicing out there, and it was really intellectually gripping, but it wasn't, there were a couple of things missing, right? I enjoyed putting the puzzles together. I enjoyed the logical games. I enjoyed the research and writing. I enjoyed speaking in court, but there was something missing. So I ended up coming back to Massachusetts. I mean, that's sort of a very long story, very, very short. And I've been here for about 3 years, first as in-house counsel for a large international manufacturing law firm, one of only 2 lawyers in-house there, still doing corporate law, but just not litigation, which is good for the company I worked for. And now I transitioned very slowly, but intentionally from New York City here to Massachusetts to be back where our family's from and be around our extended family. And then from there, once we had that stabilized, growing my ghostwriting and coaching practice into full-time income, so that way I could leave the law almost entirely. And it frees me up to practice law only for people and causes and cases that are near and dear to me, people who I want to support and causes I want to support. So it's been an incredible transition here in Boston. It's such a great place to be. There are so many startups here, mostly biotech, but a lot of restaurants, which isn't quite sort of in the market what you think of as startups, but a lot of businesses getting started, a lot of buildings going up to be filled with really exciting companies. I'm in Boston all the time, and it is just such a place where people, it's almost a small town feel for a relatively good sized city.
Yeah, we love Boston. We've interviewed a lot of entrepreneurs from Boston. There are a lot of great things going on there. You know, the university's out there pumping out a lot of talented, young, ambitious, minds that are doing cool things, those that stay in the area. And obviously it's a good place to just, for the most part, raise a family. Now we hear all the good things about Boston. We hear all the new and exciting things that are coming out of there. What are the negatives, if any, of doing what you're doing out of the area? I
guess there's a little bit of it's a very small town compared to some other larger ones. Boston has a much bigger name impact than a community. There's maybe, last time I checked, 500,000, much less than 1 million from what I understand in Boston proper. So it really spreads out a little bit. So some of the negatives that brings is there are only 2 or 3 ways to get into Boston. And even though we're 25 miles from it, one morning it took me 2 hours to get in.
Wow.
So it's the more you can focus on one activity, which is a weakness of mine, the better off you can be, because you schedule 1 or 2 things and then you use the rest of your day to sell and serve over the phone or things like that if you have to commute. But once you get into that city, there's this. It's not an energy like New York where it feels like someone's pushing you at your back. Sometimes they actually are pushing you at your back, but from an energy perspective, feeling like you have wind behind your back. Here in Boston, it almost feels like there's a warmth to it. So like someone's hugging you almost as you. It's just such a warmth to it. And sometimes that can make you calm and make you, or at least me, it releases something in my brain to just sit down and look around and enjoy the day. And it might be my AD something that is sort of getting in the way for me being able to finish that thought, or for me being able to just go about my way. But there's just something about the city that's calming. And that's cool. But it's also, when you're trying to, as I say, hustle with muscle, if you're not intentional about it and have a plan in your mind for how to combat that when you're going through that feeling, it can slow you down a little bit, for sure.
I love it. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's again, Boston is one of our favorite cities, and I'm glad that you're out there and you're making it happen. Now, one of the big reasons that we wanted to have you on the show, right? There's a few different reasons, and we're going to get into it here in just a bit. But I love your story, right, from truly corporate to now you're transitioning into entrepreneurship. You know, you're on your own. You're kind of living a life that you truly want with the schedule that you want, and you kind of mentioned it earlier. Now you're trying to pick and choose the people and the cases and the projects that you want to work on, and that's a beautiful thing, right? I mean, it's we're going to get into the details here, but it must have been difficult. It must be rewarding. It must be scary. All of those things all at once here in this journey. So let's kind of start from the beginning. You were an attorney in New York City, and you were living life. For the most part, most people would be like, yeah, I've made it, and then now I'm going to make this my career, and I'll see you in 30 years when I'm, have my big office in a high rise and, the corner office. I'm out.
Sure.
That wasn't enough for you. Like, so tell us that whole transition, that whole part of your story.
And I'll tell you, I was in a corner office, 31 floors overlooking Central Park, 31 floors up in the air at one of the most amazing law firms in the world. I still email the heads of departments and people down in other offices on a very regular basis. Yesterday or the day before, I was just emailing with someone, and we're going to catch up over phone soon. It was not a bad situation for me. I've been there 10 years. When the economy was crashing, I was there and I was succeeding, and I was getting raises and bonuses because I was doing well there and I enjoyed it and I was good at it. It was a passion of mine, except it wasn't the passion of mine.
Nice.
So when I was out there, a lot of it was my fault. I hadn't set the proper boundaries about it. I enjoyed it so much. And this is a challenge I still deal with now. I enjoyed it so much, even though there were things missing. But I loved putting the arguments together, and I loved speaking on behalf of other people. And this really led into ghostwriting, because I've written millions of words over the past 15 years or so, 12, 13, 14, 15 years, almost all on behalf of someone else. Mm-hmm. When I was a lawyer, I was writing dozens or hundreds of pages of legal briefs that took facts, law, policy, reason, all together in a voice of someone else to send a message to someone else. So my client, maybe it was the big corporation, and we had to come across and say, look, we dotted our I's and crossed our T's. We're a professional corporation. Of course we didn't do something wrong here. We know what the contract says. We performed. Look, here's everything. Or it was the little guy or gal. Hey, man, we're getting beat up over here. Of course, there's no way we could agree to something like this. So it was really this awesome exercise for me, but I hadn't set up the boundaries. So I was working way too much. And on top of that, I couldn't appreciate back then, or at least control back then, a lot of the the inconsistencies in workload. So as a litigator, I'd get a call every once in a great while. I'm talking 2 times a year, maybe on a Friday, that says, bank accounts got frozen. You got to come into the office and work all weekend.
No.
But in my mind, it was like it was something that could happen at any moment.
Uh-huh.
So my wife would say, "Hey, do you want to go out to dinner tomorrow night?" And my answer wouldn't be, "Yes, I'd love to." It would be yes, unless something comes up at work. My kids would say, "Hey, Daddy, can you play tonight when you get home from work?" And my answer wouldn't be, "Yes, I'd love to." It would be, "Yes, unless I have to work late because you have to go to bed." Mm-hmm. So I was communicating, not on purpose, but I was communicating with my reactions and where my family was trying to get my time and where I was dedicating my time to, that my family wasn't as important as my practice. And that's not what I felt inside, but that's what I was demonstrating because of my fear and my inability to manage and set those boundaries, healthy boundaries in the workplace that others were setting. It wouldn't have gotten me fired. It was just debilitating. I just couldn't do it. I thought I would lose my job. It was something in my head, and I should have known that I wouldn't have lost my job because I was progressing well even when others were struggling there. But I just couldn't get over it. So what I decided, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I decided to do in 2013, I decided to change something. I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but I needed to make a change because there were times where I was coming home and I was afraid that my wife would not be there.
Wow.
Because it was getting that tense. So I went down to a conference because I wanted to add coaching to what I was offering my legal clients. I wanted to just have that mindset and perhaps start building my mentoring into a coaching practice. I've been mentoring several people for a while there, and I wanted to just think of other options. And this was a conference that's held by a guy named Dan Miller and his wife, Joanne Miller, about coaching and coaching practices and how to build it. So it was a perfect match. I went down there, and I wasn't expecting his wife to be there because it's branded as his thing. But when his wife was there and the way that they acted towards each other and the way specifically that he acted towards his wife, they were finishing each other's sentences, not by interrupting each other, but it was like a dance. The way they looked at each other was so loving. And I sat in that room and wrote down maybe 3 pages of notes about coaching. Really great conference. Really great conference. Those 3 pages are gold. But I wrote about 4 pages observing what they're doing. Wow, look at that. And it was just something that I don't know why I was doing it. It was just something I knew I had to be in that room, and I knew I needed to learn about coaching, but I knew I was in that room to learn about relationships. So from that moment forward, I decided I was going to just throw everything that I had held on to out and rebuild one piece at a time. And it wasn't, I was the only income earner for a family of 4. And which I hear several of my friends who have 5 or 6 kids. I don't know how you guys do it. I love my kids, and I would love to have more. It's just, it's a lot of work. And I thought going from 1 to 2, man, I thought it would be, time and a half, but it's like 4 times. So anyhow, that said, I go off on tangents, as you could tell. But so I decided just to work openly about my relationship. I knew others. I looked around the room at other big law firms, especially, and to a certain extent, people I was working with, and they were struggling in their relationships too. And a lot of people were on their 2nd or 3rd spouses. So my fear that my wife wouldn't be there became, as I started focusing on that, became more than a fear, became a possibility, if not a reality. So I decided to take action and first move with my family back to Massachusetts, which was a wish of my wife's. I had built a marketing and networking practice, a business, a book of business and book of contacts out in New York that allowed me to find a more steady, not necessarily less hours, but more predictable hours back in Massachusetts. And so we decided, I came back on June 1st, 2013. On June 7th, I told my firm that I was just going to move back to Massachusetts.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
With this, so you're in that transition mode, right? I don't care about the dollar amount or anything like that, but was it a decrease in income, and was the wife okay with that, or were you already to the point where it wasn't really much of a trade-off when it came to the lifestyle shift and basically the money you're bringing in on a yearly basis that first year?
My pay cut was more than $100,000 a year.
And okay, that's significant. Obviously, I don't care what stage you're in.
Yeah.
What did the wife think?
She felt loved.
Nice.
She wasn't worried.
Nice.
Yeah, she was.
That's huge.
It was
right?
awesome.
That is huge. Good for her and good for you. What was that like in the first year then?
The first year back was a little bit of an adjustment. We bought on June 7th. I said I was going to move back to Massachusetts. On August 28th, we closed on a house. So it was just, I had a plan. I had a vision. It was our vision. And it was, what's next? All right, let's get the house. We knew roughly where we wanted to be. Massachusetts has great public schools. I was educated in public schools. I nothing against private or whatever, or homeschooling or anything like that, but it was just a vision of ours to have our kids at good public schools. So we found a town, bought a house, just one step after the other. What's next? What's next? What's next? And took a little bit of the emotion out of it because we had a plan. So, all right, when we had a clear mind, this was the plan. When we were nervous, well, what does the plan say when we were thinking without emotion? So it was pretty cool, but it was also quite an adjustment. The job was something that part of it was a pay cut because I went to a client who I really had a great relationship with, and it was an in-house position. So it's not like, part of the reason I was making so much money wasn't necessarily the base salary, although the base salary cut was over $100,000, but the bonuses and the real, where the real money is at, is building a book of business, because law firms give you a credit / bonus for bringing in business. So when I say over $100,000 pay cut, I mean just base salary, not even if you're considering the bonuses there. But we planned it. We knew how much money we had. We knew how much money we needed to maintain a lifestyle that we wanted, and the new law firm or the new company salary would cover that and still allow us to build into the future. We've always been pretty good with saving money. We live a decent lifestyle, but we're not in driving brand new cars every year and things like that. We focus our money on things that are important.
What year was that?
This was 2013. We moved here October 2013. So 2013 to 2014 is that first year.
How's it going now? What's
it's going
it like?
Great.
Yeah.
Now it's great. Now so that was the vision, bringing everyone home, getting everyone stable, and then building my coaching practice. At the time, I wasn't ghostwriting. I was writing for myself, but not others. I wasn't ghostwriting, and building that up to the point where I honored my family first, and I would build my business slowly. When we moved out here until this August, so we're talking now, you and I are talking in November of 2016. So in August of 2016, 3 months ago, I quit my legal job completely, and now just have my own, I have my own sort of practice that's all referrals and repeats for cases and people I admire and stuff.
Now you're truly on your own.
Now I'm truly on my own, yeah.
How does that feel?
It feels great because the vision, we accomplished half of that vision through the first move to get everything stable. And then from there, it was build everything up so that way it doesn't take away, because it doesn't take away from the family. So I agreed with my wife. I sat down with my wife and I said, when can I work on building my second income so that it wouldn't take away from what you need for me? And it was really hard to do. So what we decided was that I would work only when the kids are asleep, or when after the kids' bedtime, and when on Saturdays, if my wife and I would go out on a date night or something on Saturdays, because my mother takes the kids for sleepovers for grandma time, nice. Grandma and grandpa time with my mom and dad. Nice. So I only worked from 2013 when I came here to Massachusetts through August of 2016, with two exceptions. And they're not even exceptions, because I ended up hiring someone to come in and help with the kids, or having someone come in and help with the kids. I only worked from 8:30 p.m. until whenever I passed out in the chair, or Saturdays, or in the mornings before they woke up. But my kids would have no idea that I was working on anything other than my day job.
I love that hustle, right? That side hustle, that you're making it happen in truly not ideal situation, but you knew the plan and you had the vision and the goal was before you, and you made it happen. Well,
yeah, and it forces you to focus on what's important and how to be more efficient with your time, because I only have 2 to 3 hours before I'm too tired to do this.
In those years, what was the hardest part of that whole process?
It was the hardest, but also what made me most proud of myself, sort of stepping out of my body a little bit. It was saying no to opportunities.
That's big.
Yeah, I have a podcast that you know about, and I'm sure we'll talk about briefly here.
Yeah.
And I reached out to several people to be guests on my podcast, or others who have reached out to me. And before I was out, off or on my own completely, I would reach out to them, and we're talking people who've sold 10 million books. And I said, hey, I'd love to have you on my show, but here's the thing. I'm only going to interview you after 8:30 p.m. Eastern time.
How'd that go?
Can you imagine?
How'd that go over?
Every person wrote back and said, that's awesome. I'm in.
That's awesome.
There was one person who said, I have the opposite. It was sort of a friend of a friend said, hey, I got to be with my family at that time. So very respectfully said, maybe we'll do a weekend or something like that. But I've made a similar commitment. So we had the same type of commitment conflict, but people, I'm talking like millions of books and hundreds of thousands of people on email lists and stuff like that, taking their evenings to respect that sort of boundary.
Listen, you are. There are a lot of our listeners that are, I'm sure, nodding their head in agreement and understanding about, kind of you were sacrificing, right, for those few years, and then now you're to the point where it's happening. It has already started to happen. Now, talk to us about it feels like you're about to explode into this like next level, right? Because now you have all your ducks in a row. Now it's being consistent and putting out good work and doing these things. How does that feel now? And what's the next 3 years going to look like?
It feels incredible. I work exclusively so far on referrals and repeats. Every once in a while, someone will reach out to me with so much enthusiasm saying, hey, man, I really connected with your story. I heard you here or I saw you there. I love what you're doing. I want to give you business, which is such an honor, and I'll do some work with them. But what helps me or what makes that sort of arrangement great for me personally is that I get to serve my clients better because I don't have to spend a ton of time marketing. Sure. I can spend a half an hour here with you leaning into your audience and sharing some of my story to hopefully inspire them to take action in a way that fits them and their family and their dreams and their hopes. And not have to worry about having there being time to go to networking events, although I do go to networking events because I enjoy them. But I don't have to worry about marketing so much because I'm serving and I'm letting people know I work exclusively on referrals and on repeats. So they know, and they've been referring and repeating. I have someone who sent me 5 books to write, which is pretty incredible, a great referral source for me. So the next 3 years, there's a period of time when you're starting a business where you feel like you're not gaining any traction. You're working your tail off, and you're not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And this happens with a lot of people, and it happened with me. About a week after that is when things start getting better. It's like right at the point where you say, my goodness, I've been hustling for 3 years, slowly building it up, pouring into relationships. Maybe it's not a good fit. And then you get that call. Hey, I got someone I need you to talk to. So
were you ever close to quitting?
No, never close to quitting because I had that plan and I had people around me. I'm in a couple of masterminds, one in particular that is there's a really, really important way to organize a mastermind group that I believe very strongly in. And it's not necessarily people from the same industry. I don't believe in masterminds as sort of one person teaching, although there's a value to that. It's not necessarily a mastermind, or maybe it is. But a mastermind that works really well into my life is a group of people, many of whom are steps in front of me or steps behind me in important areas of my life, marriage, not just business and not just my type of business, but people who have been there and people who are 2 steps perhaps behind me, just married or something like that, or just starting or dreaming about their business. So we can all lean into each other and make that tide rise for everybody. So I was surrounded by people. They said it was natural. I had some mentors, some ghostwriting mentors, some coaching mentors, and I had clients who were thanking me in tears almost because their dreams of writing their books were coming true, and their audiences. I was looking both in my family and in my work beyond the transaction. And I don't mean that as deeper than the transaction. I mean farther than the transaction. I'm writing books for people, not so they can have a book in their hand. I'm writing books for people who have awesome information that they want to share. And there are hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people who are waiting for that content because they're not a video course or they're not a public speaking event. type of learner. They're someone who wants a book, and there's information. It's the most incredible feeling. I am getting paid to write the books I would pay to read. And I can just see the branches on the tree. I'm writing one book for someone who's going to sell hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of copies of that book to people whose lives are going to change for the better. And that mission is something that is just something I can't walk away from.
We can obviously tell you're passionate about it, right? And it's one of the things that you do. You must be doing well because you get repeat business. What's the hardest part of being a ghostwriter?
People are hiring me because they have a dream, and because they don't have time to write, or they don't have the inclination or talent necessarily to write, but they have incredible information and audience to share, or they may have the time and they may have the talent to write it, but if they unplugged from their business, then it would cost them way more than it would cost to pay me to help them write their book. So some of the challenge, the biggest challenge is turning down a project that I know needs to be done. What I've done is if I get to a point, and usually I'm scheduling a month or two out, I have a book finishing now, I have a book finishing 3 weeks from now type of situation. So there's sort of a little bit of a waiting list at this point. But there are some projects where I just have to, I can see the impact that it can have, and it's either not a great fit for me, or it's not something that I can serve, not someone or a project I can serve well because of my schedule or for some other reason. So the hardest part really is to focus on doing less better as opposed to more, and spreading myself a little thin. And that's not because I got people knocking down my door. I do have a great list of referrals and friends who are sending me business and people who are coming back, but it's because I just, people ask, and there are times where I just have to say, I can't, but I never say no. Sorry, see you later. I am a part of a group of ghostwriters, really close knit group of a few ghostwriters who I can refer people out to. So it makes me feel better because I know they serve with the same mindset that I do.
How many books can you work on at a time, or is it one at a time type of a deal?
It's about 5 at a time. And I am working, because I just went full-time 3 months ago, they've sort of piled a little bit, but I'm transitioning so that way they end and begin, say, 3 to 4 to 5 weeks apart. So I'm constantly having one drop out. My vision over the next 3 years, to continue that thought on what the next 3 years are going to look like, is to do 10 books a year and get one new project starting for 10 months, and then July and August, or June and July, slow down. So that way July and August are a little bit light, and then go heavy again starting up in the fall.
And does it matter what type of book? Can you do several different I don't know, types of books, whether it's a business book, whether it's a I don't know, different anything out there? Do you have a niche?
I do, and I do have a niche. I don't write fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I don't write fiction is because it's not something where that I have a lot of experience in. I've been doing nonfiction for 12 years between law and ghostwriting part-time and ghostwriting full-time. So I know that writing nonfiction, business books, inspirational books. For example, the books I'm working on right now are about how to build a coaching practice by a really, really big leader in the coaching industry, how to build a business, a specific niche type of business, brick and mortar business, which is it's not a real sexy title book, but the story that this founder has about how strong their operations are and what they were able to endure is just inspiring. 7 pillars of health, all different parts of health and how to live a healthy lifestyle, or real life dating stories. So really anything true, anything that's nonfiction is something that I love to put story to and put legs on and really make people feel it. My book, Confessions of a Terrible Husband, is all about my transition from large law firm lawyer. What led me down there? I was dead at the scene of a car accident when I was 16 years old, and that pushed me towards this hustle with muscle, towards workaholic almost. And my story about how I got there and what was the turnaround, and then what have I done since then. That story is what I love to tell. I love to give information through story. There's another book that I'm starting up in the next, I think, month and a half about how to run a certain type of another certain type of industry. But we're not telling it as a typical business book. We're writing it as story. It's not fiction, but it's almost like a biofiction type of story where there are 4 characters who all are there to send a message and a process and talk about how beneficial it was in the struggle and what struggle they were having and how that process helped them get out of it. So it's going to be this almost like this group of people who get together and help each other with their business. And through the stories of how everyone interacts with each other, each person's business is going to overcome that, and it's going to demonstrate what other people would do with first try this, then try that. So we're telling it as a story. You're going to get to the end of the book and you're going to say, wow, I could be just like Sally. I have the same struggle Sally does. Let me try what she did. So we're going to have that same sort of effect in a storytelling sort of way. So where there's cool story and information, that's where I thrive.
Is it ever weird that you work so hard on these and you know, because of the nature of your business, your name is not on it? You know,
no, I love it. I'm a dad. And I love when, first of all, it's all their information. It's their voice. It's not my voice. And that's really something that I feel strongly about. I will send someone a chapter and they'll send it back to me and say, this sounds great. I say, that's awesome. Does it sound like you? And I'll study them. It's almost creepy in a certain way. I say, give me stuff you've written. Let me hear you on podcasts. If they do have podcasts, here's the thing. So many people out there have books written already. It's just in pieces all over the internet, in blog posts, in tweets, in Facebook photos. If it's organized, if you're really talented at keeping your focus and your message clear, and you're talking about the same thing over and over and over again, you have stories, you have a message, you have information. If you're teaching anything or sharing your struggle with one particular issue, you have a book written. It just needs to be rewritten, organized, planned, and that's where I excel. Go through the planning process. Let's plan that book. Let's plan what points you want to make. Let's plan what you want it to do for you and the others and the readers. And then let's find where your content is and fill in the blanks to the extent we need to.
That is cool. You must take a lot of pride in the work that you do, because it obviously comes across during this interview. Now let's move on a little bit to Confessions of a Terrible Husband, and then into the 5 Minutes with Dad.
Sure.
You have a podcast. You have the website, the blog post. Like, you're not busy enough, right? Now you have these things on top of that as well. Let's talk about them.
Yeah, so Confessions of a Terrible Husband is what really started this. That's what, on the plane ride home, I thought, I'm going to start writing about improving my relationship. And I was just doodling for titles, and that's what I came up with. Confessions of a Terrible Husband, Lessons Learned from a Lumpy Couch. That subtitle was something that took a little bit more work to come up with, but the book itself, it's a humorous take on there's some emotion up front with me dying, obviously, but just a humorous take on all the stupid little things I was doing, all the little things that it doesn't take counseling to fix. It's just stop doing it, or it's recognizing where your weaknesses are and thinking at what the struggles are in your marriage, or what your wife or husband gets frustrated with, and just being different. So it's a very simple but deep and revealing take on my particular struggle. I don't talk a lot about my wife. I focus all about what I was doing wrong. Obviously, no one's perfect, right? So for me, it's all about me. So Confessions of a Terrible Husband was a blog. It became a podcast, and it's just gangbusters. It's so exciting to write and to speak about, because people reach out with even questions. Hey, what can I do to get started? And I immediately respond, look at my title. I'm vice president, because my wife's the president, and chief terrible husband. And I made that. There's no official president or anything like that, but I made sure my title was vice president to remind me that I'm not here. This isn't me alone. And I say, hey, the best thing I did was surround myself with people who had great marriages, because me saying or doing something stupid wasn't going to be accepted by the person sitting next to me. So I just love sharing regular people information and encouraging people. Counseling is really important. It's really, really helpful, but you can do more or not more. You can get started now, even before counseling, and just start improving your relationship. Go to counseling at some point, whether it's early, whether it's late. It doesn't really matter, but don't use counseling, or my wife or my husband won't go to counseling as an excuse to not do anything to improve your relationship. So I built that up. Yeah, go ahead.
It's funny with what you're doing there. There's some personal stories, right? I mean, you open yourself up a little bit where the kind of the ghost writing is completely the opposite almost. So you're kind of hitting both venues there, right? Where one of them is just, hey, business, let's get it done, and the other one is the stories of you and your life. And how does that feel? Was that weird in the beginning?
A little bit. The way I see it is everything sort of revolves around the same theme. I want to help people build their brand, grow their business, have positive impact in the world, without leaving their families behind. Yep. So I'm doing that in my business. That's not only what I teach and what I talk about, but it's what I do. And it's really important to me. It really helps me in my relationship aterriblehusband.com is if I'm busy, it's the first thing to not get content. Mm-hmm. I'm so busy writing other people's content that I'm less frequent on aterriblehusband.com, except the the Confessions of a Terrible Husband content is the most popular because people relate to it, and it's pretty awesome how loyal my fellow terrible spouses are, and I really, really admire that about them and appreciate that. But the first thing I attend to is the stuff that I've committed to within the time frame that I've set. So that way I can still walk my kids to school, or not still. So that way I can, because that was the thing that happened first after I quit my day job as an attorney. And I quit it because I wanted to be there when they went for school. I wanted to be there when they came back from school, and I hustle with muscle in between, and I hustle with muscle at night. So for me, it's just designing my business around my family and talking about it. So at aterriblehusband.com, I talk about my struggles, and I talk about some of the cool things, and I interview really cool people. I have an awesome interview coming up shortly about a guy who literally rowed a boat across the Atlantic Ocean.
Nice.
And I'm going to talk about how his wife didn't murder him. So it's going to be a pretty awesome conversation. So I get to learn from these people and improve my relationship. So it's really aterriblehusband.com. It is so therapeutic to me. And 5 Minutes with Dad, that's my podcast with my two kids.
Yeah, we're going to have links to both of them. But yeah, let's get into the 5 Minutes with Dad. Tell us about that.
I was planning my Confessions podcast when I was sitting at the dinner table one day talking to my wife. I said, hey, do you care if I buy some equipment? It's like $100 to start a podcast. And she's like, no, I don't care. Go ahead. She's like, I want. I said, Confession. She's like, all right, go for it. My son, he was 4 years old at the time. He said, what's a podcast? So I'm like, how do I explain this to a 4-year-old? Fortunately, sometimes that's as fast as my brain will operate. So I just said, well, it's kind of like like a show like you watch on TV or listen to on the radio, but it's on people's phones and on the computer. And he's like, so you're just talking to a microphone and people listen? I said, yeah. He's like, can I have one? Like it was something you go out to the store to buy. Yeah. So I said, yeah, sure. I was on a mission to say yes more. So I said, yes, you can. And my daughter was 2 years old at the time, and she goes, can I be on it? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? Now, have you ever tried to get a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old to sit in front of a microphone without eating it for more than, say, 6 minutes or 7 minutes or 6 seconds? If you ever have, it is the most... I have learned so much patience from having that show with professional microphones and obviously not too expensive, but real equipment, real quality sound. With 2 kids, it took me 45 minutes to record. That's why it's called 5 Minutes with Dad and not 35 minutes with Dad. So we just to get on the microphone and talk about something that's really important to the world and important to us. So what we do, we get on the show and we talk about something that I want them to remember. I want like a life lesson. The last episode we recorded was about courage, and I taught them about courage and what's the difference between crazy and courage, and that's planning and preparation. And what's and what is courage? Courage is when you're scared, but you still do things within reason. For when I'm talking to now they're 4 and 7 years old, when I'm talking to them, I don't want them to just do anything. So my daughter would interact and say, can you tell me something where you were courageous? And she said, I can't think of anything. Well, and I lead them a little bit to think of a time where they're courageous, like performing songs in front of all the parents at the school. So we have these awesome, deep daddy-daughter, father-son, or the 3 of us conversations, and parents listen in, kids listen in, and it's so beautiful because I'm having these conversations, and I'm very, very intentional about not putting any sort of beliefs, specific beliefs, but just really talking about content with them, or concepts with them. So we're going to have an episode to talk about the U.S. election in a little bit, and it's not going to have anything to do with politics. But this morning, we're recording the day after the election was over. But this morning, I went in and I talked to my kids, and I wanted to be the first person to tell them who won the presidency. And I've been telling them all along that this message, and I've been telling them I don't agree with the things that person's saying. I don't agree. I don't think it's nice for them to say that, and I don't agree with that person and this about that person. And it's about the issues, not the people. I wasn't a person that says if this happens, I'm moving to Canada, or if that happens, the world's going to end. Because I'm looking on Facebook all day today, and people are saying, "What am I supposed to say to my kids?" Well, you know what? It depends what you said the whole time.
Exactly.
If you started screaming the world's going to end if this person wins and that person ends up winning, yeah, you got to explain something, because your kid's scared to death.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, but if you sat there and said, "Hey, I'm just going to talk to you with 4-year-old or 7-year-old language," yes, there are people running. They've done some silly, stupid things, or whatever words you want to use that you're comfortable with your kids, and that would get them in a lot of trouble if they were here. I don't care who they are. If they were in my house and they said that, I'd kick them out. But they all want to do a good job for the country, and people are going to choose which one they like the best. And you know what? Some of them might get in trouble for what they've done in the past, but they're running and they want to make our country better. But you know what? And this is what I told them this morning. The person in the White House has nothing to do with how happy you are, how successful you are, or anything. So it was really, really cool. We're sitting around the table this morning for breakfast, and I'm telling my kids, who's the only person who can make your life better? And they're screaming, "Me!" And it was like this halftime locker room talk. So this is the type of stuff we do on the show, is to talk about these things with the kids, 4-year-olds. It's all clean, it's all fun, and it's just been such a.
What's the goal there? How long are you gonna go with that show? We're gonna
keep going until they don't want to do it anymore. With 5 Minutes with Dad.
Nice.
My daughter loves it. We got a couple years left at least. My son still loves it. They get paid for each episode.
They do get paid.
They get 4 quarters for each episode, and we have 4 piggy banks, and they put one in giving, one in saving, one in spending, one in investing. So they learn to work for money, and that money has multiple purposes. Don't squirrel it away, and don't spend it like crazy.
You're doing it right, my friend.
Man, I get so pumped about this. When you told me that, it sounded like I'm going to jump out. I thought you were talking about the microphone for a second, but earlier.
No. So listen, as we start to kind of wrap this up, let's kind of bring it back full circle. You are a true entrepreneur, right? I mean, you're working on something that's making you money. You're working on something that you're passionate about. You have goals. You're trying to meet those. You have met a bunch of them. So now you are living, for in a lot of people's definition, a successful life, right? I mean, I don't care how much is in your bank account. You're doing what you like. That's a success. With all of the success that you've had, now for my audience, let's kind of bring it back a little bit. What is any type of advice that you can kind of give them, that you can give us, where we can kind of take a story from your journey, or a do or a don't type of a thing that is going to help us get to the next level? Yeah.
I'm scared to death. No matter how pumped I am scared about everything I'm doing. Not because there's so many different types of fear. Some of it's fear of failure. Some of it's fear that you're not as good as you're saying you are, or that you're not ready, or that you waited too long, or you're scared of what success might look like. Imagine a music industry person who's working for 30 years and they have a spouse that they've been married to for 15 years, and they get discovered and now they're going all over the world. You might fear for your relationship there. There's so much to fear if you're concentrating on the fear. So I'm still scared. I still don't know where it's going to lead, but I'm walking in a direction, and I'm prepared to stop if I need to stop, if it's veering too far left or right. So fear is powerful. But there are 3 things that you can do, no matter what you want, to start combating a little bit of that fear. And the first thing is to plan. Have a plan, even if it's a visual. I prefer to write it down. Have a plan for what you want to do, and have a plan about the fear. So what are you going to do when you feel that fear? Then prepare. So prepare for those moments of fear. What are the obstacles? What is it where you stumble and then you just go take a nap? Because that's what I do. When I get scared, I go take a nap. And then that means I don't work, and that means I don't market. Whatever it is I'm not doing. So prepare for that. And then who are the people? So plan is number one. Two, prepare for these moments and have a script in your mind. What am I going to do when I hit that obstacle that normally would push me into hiding? But what am I going to do to push through instead of push back and push into hiding and go take a nap? I'm going to prepare mentally for that moment and prepare what do I need to do to be able to be the best I can do? What can I prepare for? What conversations can I have now? So that way, if I am successful, I'm not successful on a house of cards. And then people, what people do I have to surround myself? What support do I have, and where can I give back? Because if it's only support for you, then it's really, really empty. It feels good, but it's really empty. But constantly be giving back. What people can I give with together as a group to each other? Once you get that, no matter what you are looking for, if you have a plan and you prepare mentally for all this stuff and with what you need to do to learn and equipment or whatever it needs to do, you plan, you prepare, and you have the right people in your life, you can be even more powerful in that fear once you've put that together. So that way you'll still be scared, but you can be confident to do it scared anyway. Whatever you want to do, do it scared. If it's worth doing and if you're going to make a meaningful impact in other people's lives, do it scared. Be prepared, but do it scared.
I love it. That's great advice. Now, for those that have listened to this episode that like what you're doing, have been able to find inspiration in your words and just kind of want to get to know you a little bit more, where can we find you online?
Well, there are two places, really. If you want to learn about the relationship stuff, you just go to aterriblehusband.com, or unfortunately, if you Google "my husband is a moron," I'm right on the first page. So just look for that. I wish that weren't true. But just like when I was in high school and people would say, if you look up stupid in the dictionary, you'd see a picture of you.
Nice.
If you Google "my husband's a moron," boom, right there, my about page. But for any writers out there who are interested in writing their first book or their next book, and especially if it is a nonfiction book that's in their mind, they want to help people, they want to give information, I have a free course. It's a free 4-part video course. It's very simple. It's recorded on me just on my up here in my office where I do all my ghostwriting, and it walks through a process of how to plan the book, what you want it to do for you, what you want it to do for your audience, plan the content that goes in there. So that way, instead of writing a book, most people stop because they open up a sheet of paper and they say, okay, write a book. And then they get like 2 pages in, they said, that's all I got. I got no more information. But if they planned it from the start, they could pump right through it, or even be in a position to get help pumping through it with a colleague or a friend or whatever. So if you go to nickpavlidis.com/outlier, that's my name, nickpavlidis.com/outlier. Right there, you can get that free 4-part video course on how to plan to write your next book.
I love it.
Straight for Outlier on Air.
I love it. That's very, very, very gracious. Thank you very much. So Outliers, you can go to outliermagazine.co. That's outliermagazine.co. First of all, subscribe to the podcast, rate, review it. But there you'll also be able to find links to Nick's websites, to the podcast, to this wonderful offer that he just provided for the Outlier community. Again, feel free to reach out to him and connect with him. Nick, hey, this has been really amazing. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, opening up, and giving us advice. This was a lot of fun. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Ever. I'm honored.
Absolutely. So, Outliers, we'll talk to you tomorrow.